What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Cleveland Browns pregame tailgate show. It has been a few weeks since you guys have seen me on a Sunday morning. Last week, the Cleveland Browns were on a bye after their home loss to the Las Vegas Raiders. That game back in week 8, we actually had a special edition of the Cleveland Browns tailgate show on a Thursday night. I was joined by my special guest, Mark Bradley, who was a Raiders fan. But we're back into it again, back for the regular scheduled tuning of the Cleveland Browns pregame tailgate show. I am your host, Sean Stevenson. You guys can go ahead and give me a follow on my social media accounts in the top left and right hand corners. That's SHWN Stevenson. I am a contributing writer for Sports Illustrated Browns Digest, giving you guys weekly articles. We are led by lead editor Pete Smith, also with contributing writer as well, Brandon Little. Be sure to check out the website at Sports Illustrated. That's www.si.com/NFL/Browns. And we're going to go ahead and get straight into it. So the Cleveland Browns are hosting the Houston Texans at First Energy Stadium today in Cleveland. And the weather today is a rainy and wet one, and those winds are back. So that tough matchup that we saw against the Las Vegas Raiders with some, unideal weather conditions are going to be returning for this game. And for you that saw the matchup 2 weeks ago against the Raiders, the Browns were pretty much out physical and outmatched in that game in terms of just winning at the line of scrimmage. And in a situation that this weather is going to continue to be wet and raining and winds blowing really hard, the Browns have to win at the point of attack, which is in the trenches, and just being a more physical team than they were 2 weeks ago against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the last time these two teams met, the Texans did win the game 29-13. That was back in week 13 of the 2018 season. Now, many of you may remember this was that game that was kind of like the welcome back to earth game for the Browns that season when Baker Mayfield went on that pretty much really good run after they had relieved Hugh Jackson when Greg Williams was the interim head coach. And that was back in Houston. So this will definitely be a good opportunity for Baker Mayfield to have essentially a gauge matchup with Deshaun Watson, who has been one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL so far this season. So obviously, the better that Baker Mayfield can play, this will be a good opportunity to gauge where he'll be in terms of, is he a franchise quarterback? And essentially, we all know that Deshaun Watson is a franchise quarterback. So the things that he can showcase in this game will be a good benchmark for Baker Mayfield and what we should expect in the near future. Now, looking at the Browns so far, they are 5-3 this season. They're currently have the 6th rated rushing attack with exactly 1,200 yards so far this season. Now, one of the big things is that they're going to be getting running back Nick Chubb back, which is huge for this team. So obviously, you want to expect them to be running the ball a little bit more. Now, heading into the season, we expect them to run the ball a lot, which they did. And, with that, they had one of the highest rushing attacks in the NFL. They were actually the number 1 rushing attack in the NFL for a few weeks. And then obviously, with Nick Chubb going down, they were running the ball a little bit less. They were actually number 1 in attempts heading up until about week 6. Now they're at 12th in rushing attempts. So you're looking at them to get back to that foundation of running the ball, now having both Hunt and Chubb in the backfield. Then looking at the passing, so far, the passing game still has yet to really get going in that manner where this team is going to be completely dangerous. We really saw its potential the most against the Cincinnati Bengals, which was Baker Mayfield's best game, in which he threw 5 touchdowns, including the game-winning one to Donovan Peoples-Jones. So you expect them to find their footing and get a little bit more consistent passing attack. Obviously, they do have the loss of Odell Beckham, but giving themselves essentially 2 weeks, that is enough time for them to figure out what players works in, what personnel works in which sets in order to get the pass game going, which is very important. And then also looking at the defensive side of the ball, currently they're the 22nd ranked passing defense. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on, is how the secondary performance against Deshaun Watson and that very explosive Texans passing offense. And then they are the 9th best rushing defense in the NFL, limiting offenses to only 4 yards per carry. Now, flipping over to the Houston Texans, who are currently 2-6 this season. Obviously, they're going through a slight rebuild with the release, or I should say the firing of former head coach and general manager Bill O'Brien. He's no longer in the building, and we all know that he's been there for a while. So they're going into a transitional period. When you look at their offense is pretty one-dimensional. You look at the fact they have the 32nd ranked rushing offense in NFL. They're 31st in attempts. The only team that has less attempts than them so far this season is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who also in their division, who will play later this season. And then you look at what they do in terms of passing. They're the 10th rated passing attack in the NFL. But the thing that really stands out the most is the fact that they're the 6th most efficient team at throwing the ball in the NFL. So even though they're not winning a lot of games, they're definitely relying on the arm of Deshaun Watson. You look at the receiver core of Brandon Cooks, Kenny Stills, Will Fuller. They have a lot of options on the outside and players with a lot of speed. And speed has been one of those situations where the back end of the secondary, especially that third level, has struggled a lot. You look at Hollywood Brown and what he did to that offense. So it'll definitely be something to monitor throughout the game, is how that third level performs against this fast receiver core of the Texans. But again, it all comes down to what the Browns can do as a defense as a whole, starting in the trenches, looking at that linebacker core, and then, of course, going to the third level. Now, moving over to the injury report, the Browns so far have had a relatively clean week, which is something that we didn't have the luxury of saying over the last few weeks. As you all know, they struggle with a lot of injuries throughout the week. And, outside of linebacker Jacob Phillips, who's just been dealing with that knee injury since about week 2, he's the only player listed as questionable. Now, he's likely going to be a game time decision. But so far this season, he's only played about 36 defensive snaps. So, he's not necessarily a significant contributor to the defense, but he is something to the coaching staff, or potentially what he could provide in almost being a third or 3 down linebacker, which this defense really doesn't have. So, if they're able to get Jacob Phillips back in some capacity this week and then going into later in the season, maybe they might be able to give him some more snaps to see what he is in terms of being a 3 down linebacker, which his team doesn't have. And then also the biggest thing this week in terms of the injury report is the fact that running back Nick Chubb got activated off for injury reserve after dealing with that knee injury. He's been gone for basically the last 6 weeks, including the bye last week. Getting him back is huge for this offense. Just their ability to run the ball is extremely important, because we all know that the Browns find the most success when they're able to pawn the ball early and often, using both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Now, we look at Kareem Hunt. He has done a lot in terms of being that number 1 running back in the backfield. But now having Nick Chubb back, you have your dedicated bell cow, and you're able to use Kareem Hunt in different situations where you want to use 22 personnel with 2 running backs, motioning him out wide, or just being able to give him a breather, something that he didn't get much of while Nick Chubb was out. Now, looking at the Houston Texans and their injury report, they're going to be missing some key contributors to their offense, mostly running back David Johnson. He's going to be out with a concussion. Obviously, they have the 32nd ranked rushing attack, so he wasn't offering a lot in terms of rushing productivity, but he is a player that is versatile and could catch passes out of the backfield. They'll expect him to be replaced by former Browns running back Duke Johnson. And then also they will be without offensive guard Sino Clemente, who's also going to be out with a concussion as well. And then you have linebacker Dylan Cole, who's currently dealing with a back injury. He's listed as questionable. And then also defensive end Charles Omenihu. He is a game time decision with a hamstring injury. He's also listed as questionable. So let's go ahead and get into the depth chart of the Houston Texans. When you look at quarterback Deshaun Watson, he's obviously a player that is going to be very important for the success of this Houston Texans offense. The offense pretty much starts and ends with Deshaun Watson, obviously by the fact that they're so one-dimensional with the lack of a running game. And then again, you look at the fact that they're going to be without David Johnson in this game. So Duke Johnson is going to be the one getting that start. Currently right now, he's around 59.7 in terms of Pro Football Focus grading. More of a player that he's efficient when he does run the ball, but he's never going to be that power back that's going to consistently be getting touches and carries, out of the backfield. He's going to be more of that player that catches passes out of the backfield, try to be more versatile in terms of what he offers to the offense. So it'll be interesting to see how they decide to deploy Duke Johnson this week. Obviously, the Browns do have a relatively good run defense, being a top 10 unit, but with this team not really running the ball a lot, expect them to air it out, and they can do it with a lot of success, especially with the receivers they have. With essentially always having 3 receivers on the field, you can expect Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, and Randall Cobb to get a lot of looks. And this is definitely going to be a big matchup for the Browns, is this receiver core. Will Fuller has blazing speed. He's grading extremely well so far this season, has an 80.3 Pro Football Focus grade, which is on the higher end of all receivers, actually 17th highest in the league right now. And then they also have Brandon Cooks, who's also another Blazer. So, expect them to use Deshaun Watson's arm and stretch the field vertically often with this offense, because they have the players that can stretch the field and really get that third level to back off. And then they have Randall Cobb coming over from Green Bay and obviously the Dallas Cowboys. But expect him to be that player underneath that can make plays. And even in situations that they go to 4 receiver sets, they also have Kenny Stills, another player with a lot of speed that can stretch the field vertically. Looking at the tight end position, they do have Darren Fells. He's backed up by Jordan Atkins and former Brown, Farrell Brown. And then moving over to their offensive line, they do have Laramie Tunsil. Max Sharpering is going to be moving to the starting lineup this week. He's actually having his first snap since week 3. He did start the first 3 games of the season and then was replaced in week 4. At center, they have Nick Martin. Right guard is Zach Fulton. And then at right tackle, Titus Howard will be wrapping up the rest of that offensive line. Now, looking at this offensive line, this is a group that has struggle with consistently protecting Deshaun Watson. They have allowed a sack in 17 straight games going all the way back to last season. So this is definitely a unit that can be beat. You look at the fact that Olivier Vernon was able to get 2 sacks against the Las Vegas Raiders. Myles Garrett, who's arguably in the lead for the Defensive Player of the Year award, with his ability to get after the quarterback, tied for first with the most sacks in the league right now with 9. Expect him to continue to make an impact, on this game. Myles Garrett is likely going to be lined up against Titus Howard for a good portion of this game, and he should be able to take advantage of Titus Howard, who's graded relatively below average so far this season, and could be another potential matchup nightmare for that Texans offensive line having to go against Myles Garrett. But obviously, this won't be any cakewalk either for the Cleveland Browns offensive line, as they have to go against defensive end J.J. Watt, who has been a great defensive player, has won multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards. And, obviously he has been in the media for some comments. Basically, most people believe he's going to be traded to a contender after this offseason, given the rebuild that the Texans are likely going to be going through. But again, J.J. Watt, just another player that you always have to take account for, both in his run defense and getting after the quarterback. He does have an 80.8 run defensive grade according to Pro Football Focus. So running to his side of the field will be relatively difficult, but looking at the Browns offense and how they actually like to attack the field, they typically do run between the center and the guards, and that's about 60% of their runs are in between the center and the guards for this offense. So expect them to use some zone and gap schemes in order to stay away from J.J. Watt and find a little bit more consistent running game away from his side of the field. Wrapping up that defensive line, they do have P.J. Hall, who lines up a little bit more inside, with them running a scheme that's more about a 3-3-5. That'll be something that you'll always kind of see, is that they'll use 3 down defensive linemen and 3 linebackers, and then they typically like to use multiple defensive backs on the back end. Wrapping up the interior, they have Brandon Dunn and then also Ross Blacklock, their second-round pick from this draft. And then also, when you look at the rest of the offensive line, an edge player in Whitney Merciless, a player that they've always relied on in terms of his pass rushing productivity, being that stand-up linebacker. And then also at the inside linebacker positions, you have Zach Cunningham and Tyrell Adams. Now, moving over to the cornerback group and the back 4 of that offense, really more of a back 5. You look at cornerback Bradley Roby, a former Ohio State Buckeye, a player that's bounced around a little bit in the league so far. He's the number 1 corner on this team right now. It's grading relatively decent in coverage with a 72.3 coverage grade. And you have Vernon Hargreaves III, a player that came over from Tampa Bay. He's pretty much struggled so far in his career in the NFL. He's a player that essentially that you want to see a little bit more consistency from, but you just really haven't seen it, being a former first-round pick. He's actually grading very poorly this season, well below average with the 37.2. He has a 33.6 coverage grade, so definitely expect Jarvis Landry or Rashar Higgins to try to take advantage of that matchup. And he's just been a player that really hasn't found any consistency so far in the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see how they decide to potentially attack him. And then looking at the nickelback position, they do use Eric Murray, again, another former Browns player, on on this roster. And then also Phillip Gaines, another former Browns player that's in that secondary. Those are the two players they'd like to use at that nickelback role when they're both in nickel and dime packages. And then at strong safety, they do use Justin Reed. And with free safety, it's a little bit of a hybrid position for them when they do decide to go to nickels based packages. When they have an extra defensive back on the field, they like to slide Eric Murray down from that free safety role and then bring in Lonnie Johnson to play that free safety role. Now, again, the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show is brought to you by Sports Illustrated, Browns Digest, and Focus Clothing. Focus Clothing is a Cleveland-based clothing company. Be sure to check them out. They do have a lot of new apparel, hoodies, zip-up jackets, hats as well, and also with some sales on their hats and crop hoodies. So be sure to check them out at focusclothingcle.com/shop. And you also can follow me at Sean Stevenson, SHWN Stevenson, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Who said that t-shirt was only for the summer?
So we're going to go ahead and get into the schemes for this week. Looking at the Houston Texans, they are a team that like to utilize 13 personnel. That will be 1 running back and 3 receivers on the field. Now, also, you can expect Darren Fields to be on the field a lot. He's a player that has had a quick connection with Deshaun Watson. Again, another former Browns player on that roster. He's always shown a knack of getting into the red zone and being that big body target, being able to box out linebackers or smaller defensive backs in the red zone to essentially get into the end zone, something that they've done with a lot of success. And then with their offense, they're a team that likes to attack vertically with a lot of that speed and then hit receivers underneath, rather it would be with halfback draws or just with checkdowns out of the backfield, something that Duke Johnson has always been able to find success with in the NFL. So, expect them to throw the ball early and often a lot with this team. Like I said, they don't run the ball a lot, having the 31st least attempts in the NFL right now running the ball, and they have the 32nd ranked rushing attack. Now, with the efficiency that they're throwing the ball with Deshaun Watson under center, expect them to try to attack this Browns defense as much as possible. Now, we know that the Browns defense is still running that 4-3 under, and they try to use a relatively passive aggressive defense because they try to keep things in front of them. But depending on the situation, Joe Woods will dial up some pressure and send blitzes from maybe a defensive back out of the slot or potentially a linebacker. Sometimes he'll send a safety, Ronnie Harrison or Sheldrick Redwine, depending on the personnel he's using on the field. But expect the Houston Texans to try to attack this secondary of the Browns a lot. Now, looking at their defense, they are a team, again, that likes to use a 3-3-5 big nickel. With that means they'll have an extra defensive back on the field. But typically in that nickel package, when you do have that extra defensive back instead of a linebacker, it'll be a safety. And in that case, it will be Eric Murray as he comes down from that free safety spot and steps in and plays in the slot. And then covering him will be Lonnie Johnson. And then, of course, when they do go to their dime package, when they only have 2 linebackers on the field, they'll potentially bring in Phillip Gaines as that dime corner. Now, moving on to the quarterback comparison. We all know that this is going to be a very big matchup for the Cleveland Browns and just to see a better performance out of Baker Mayfield. Now, we know that in their last matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders that the weather was a factor. But again, looking at the weather report today, there's a very strong chance that the weather is going to be a factor this week. And you can't really blame Baker Mayfield too much for the struggles that the team had based off their performance because the skill positions of the Browns didn't give Baker Mayfield a lot of help last week. You look at the drops, Jarvis Landry in the end zone. You look at the catch and fumble by Harrison Bryant, a huge drop on 3rd and 5 by David Njoku. Those small plays of a player just holding onto a ball or being able to convert a 3rd down into a 1st down really can make the difference in getting the Browns some momentum. That was the thing that they really lacked on getting in their last matchup against the Raiders. It's the fact they only had 6 drives the whole game. When you look at that, that really means that you're not sustaining drives for a long time, running the ball with success. And then when you do throw the ball, being able to move the chains, because typically the Browns will run on first or second down and then look to throw the ball, depending on if it's a third or short or third and medium. And that sort of offense where you can start to drive off early with running downs early in the drive, it allows you to use play action later in the game. We've seen it multiple times throughout this season that head coach Kevin Stefanski likes to come out there on a drive and immediately start it off with a play action and get Baker Mayfield rolling out of the pocket. That's where he's found most of his success this season, is out of the pocket, on bootlegs, on rollbacks. And a play that he's found a lot of success, especially in the second half of matchups, is having that bootleg early and then throwing back across the field with that receiver scraping across the field, or potentially a tight end. You'll see potentially Rashar, Higgins, or Austin Hooper running across the formation, depending on how they run that play action bootleg, and find some success with that. So looking at Baker Mayfield, we really want to see him be able to grow from his experiences. We really saw what talent he has, and what he can be in terms of being a franchise quarterback against the Cincinnati Bengals, where he threw 21 straight completions and 5 touchdowns. Now, his decision-making, obviously is important because he did throw an interception that game. We want to see him lower that amount of turnover-worthy plays in one game and be a little bit more confident. And he's had success in the red zone, which is an improvement compared to last year, where when he was in the red zone, throwing interceptions, fumbling the ball, you never want to get in the 20-yard line and not come out with points. Because in a situation that you don't even get a field goal and the other team scores, now you're looking at a 10-point swing by the fact they just got a touchdown and you missed out on 3 points. In a bad weather game, the one thing that you don't want to do is turn the ball over. And at least in the red zone, Baker Mayfield hasn't shown that quality to do so. Now let's hope that, he builds upon that success and chemistry that he's found with Rashar Higgins and Jarvis Landry, and how he can get the offense to grow. But it all kind of starts with him, because even though the run game is the foundation of this offense, if Baker Mayfield is able to feel comfortable in the pocket, not feel antsy, he can throw a good ball. Now, Kevin Stefanski talked about this week in his press conferences that it's really on him to get Baker Mayfield comfortable, warm him up with some easy throws, and, build that confidence early in the game. It was also a matter of figuring out what kind of quarterback Baker Mayfield is for this offense. When you really look at Baker Mayfield, yes, he has the arm talent to drive the ball down the field, but he's not that player to constantly throw it deep and vertical on a consistent basis. He's a quick tempo passer. 3 steps, get the ball out of your hands, make the right read. When you look at his game against the Bengals, when you look against the Cowboys, potentially even the Colts, when he's at his best, he's moving out of the pocket and he has 3 options. It's simple. You have an intermediate read, a read down the field, and you have a check down. In the situation that the intermediate read is not open, the check down is usually a play where you just get the ball out of your hands, get a couple yards, and play for the next down. When he's trusted his eyes, he's trusted the system, knows where players are after post-snap movement by the defense, that's when he plays at his best. Now, Kevin Stefanski did say, this week in his press conferences that he wants to set up Baker Mayfield better, in the back half of this season, and that all comes down to how he does his play calling. If he's able to give a competent game where he's allowing that run game to flourish, then allowing Baker Mayfield to play off a play action or potentially an RPO, then you'll really see a lot of success from Baker Mayfield. But in the situation where he has to throw the ball 30-plus times, that's when you're getting out of the comfort zone of this offense, while Baker Mayfield still builds that confidence that he needs in order to take that next step. Now, looking on the flip side, Deshaun Watson is a quarterback where they're relying on him essentially every single week to even keep this team in games. Winning is going to be tough one where your defense isn't relatively good. You have no running attack at all on offense. So they pretty much rely on Deshaun Watson. And it's tough, for an offense to find consistent production in their passing game when you can't keep the quarterback clean. You look at the fact that he's been sacked in 17 straight games. He's been sacked 24 times in 8 games so far this season. So defenses have shown the ability to get after Deshaun Watson. Also, the offensive line has shown an inability to block on a consistent basis. That's been something that was a discussion throughout Bill O'Brien's tenure as the head coach and general manager. He's out of the building now, but they're still stuck with the situation of not being able to protect Deshaun Watson on a consistent basis. But on the same token, Deshaun Watson is so good of a quarterback that he hasn't allowed the lack of production and consistency from his offensive line to stop his ability to throw the ball. He's currently rated 6th of all quarterbacks by Pro Football Focus with the 85.6 offensive grade and an 82.5 passing grade. Last week, he had 281 yards for 2 touchdowns, even ran for 50 yards. Even when the pocket breaks down and collapses on him, he finds a way to make plays down the field. He throws the ball deep with no problem. He's a very talented quarterback. Now, most of you that have been Browns fans for a while, you know that there was a situation back in 2017. Do they draft Myles Garrett or Deshaun Watson? Now, looking back at it, are we glad that they drafted Myles Garrett? Of course. But there were also other picks that could have been used. You look at the fact that they had Jabril Peppers and the David Njoku pick in the first round. There's no reason to say that you couldn't have packaged those picks up and drafted Deshaun Watson. You look at his ability as a quarterback and, what he's able to do with a so-so offensive line. Imagine what he could do with basically a top 10 unit of which the Cleveland Browns have. So, those are some of the questions that may come up in commentary throughout this game of how the Browns passed on Deshaun Watson. But really, the thing is with Deshaun Watson is just his ability to make plays when the pocket breaks down, being able to find consistent windows and very tough windows to throw the ball. That's what makes him so great. And one of the things that's always that's really stuck out to me since he got drafted is what Dabo Swinney said when he declared for the NFL draft. He said, if you pass on Deshaun Watson, you're passing up on Michael Jordan of quarterbacks. Now, we all know that Patrick Mahomes is great, but I guarantee if he's able to stay healthy, Deshaun Watson is going to win an MVP, at least one. Even if he doesn't win multiple MVPs in his career, he's going to win at least one. With the talent and how the league is transitioning into a pass-first league, essentially on every single team for the most part, his ability as a passer, if he gets the right coaching staff that gets him offensive line to protect him, there's no reason why Deshaun Watson won't win an MVP. He's too talented of a quarterback. He has weapons, and he's a type of quarterback that makes the players around him better. And this is going to be a tough matchup for the Browns. This third level has struggled. You look at Andrew Sendejo, where he's just been a mishmash of poor play and being in the wrong spot. Now, can you really, blame the Browns coaching staff on Sendejo playing as much as he has this season? Not really, because when they signed him, he wasn't supposed to be the starter this season. It was supposed to be Grant Delpit. But in that situation, he's played the most snaps of any player on the defense. And now it's time for him to step up, especially in this game. When you're the free safety and you're that third level, last line of defense, Andrew Sendejo has to step up. If he doesn't, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks can stretch the field quickly, and he's always kind of been a step too slow. And if he does it this week, that can result in a touchdown. And you don't really want to see this Browns defense get in a shootout with Deshaun Watson. Not because I don't believe the Browns offense has the ability to win a shootout, but over the last few weeks, the offense has struggled to find their identity of, what they need to be without Odell Beckham Jr. Now, obviously, they had a good game against the Bengals, but I definitely believe that the Texans are a better team than the Bengals in terms of, what they can give on offense. So it'll be interesting to see how this secondary plays against Deshaun Watson. and, expect him to have another big game. But it comes down to Baker Mayfield finding some consistency and this Browns secondary stepping up and just trying to contain Deshaun Watson this week. Now, moving over to the running backs, excuse me. One of the important things to really look at is what impact will Nick Chubb have in his first game back? Now, he's been out for the last 6 weeks with a knee injury. He just got activated off of IR this week. He's been in practice. He practiced all week with a knee brace. It's very likely that he'll be using that knee brace during the game, until he feels comfortable enough to take it off. He might be one of those players that wears it for the rest of his career just because it gives him that mental clarity of being able to play without having to worry about cutting and his knee buckling or not feeling safe running on that knee. Now, I don't expect some huge game where he runs for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns because they're going against a bad rushing defense. But on the same token, you want to be able to warm him back up into football shape. When you haven't played for 6 weeks, you don't get out there and get 20 carries, 25 carries, and just become the bell cow, and then Kareem Hunt kind of just gets pushed to the side. I wouldn't be surprised if Kareem Hunt has a bigger share, or they have about an equal share of carries and touches out of the backfield this week, compared to the first 4 weeks where he was actually in. There was obviously Nick Chubb got the bulk of carries, and then in the back half of the second half, around the fourth quarter, you use Kareem Hunt to close out games. I don't think they're going to go exactly back to that model just yet, because you have to allow Nick Chubb to get back into football shape. If he's able to do that, within the next coming weeks, that really sets the Browns up well in terms of making a playoff run. But a lot of this offense will be on the success that Nick Chubb finds running the ball. We all know he has the vision and the ability to find cutback lanes, but it depends on, how comfortable and confident does he feel running and cutting on that knee. If he's able to do that on a consistent basis, then we can expect Nick Chubb to, have a solid game. I highly expect him to get a rushing touchdown, because that's been something that the Browns have struggled to do in the red zone since he's been gone. They're actually one of the lowest rated teams in terms of power success, according to Football Outsiders. And basically in situations where it's 3 or less yards to go in order to get a first down or on the goal line to get a touchdown, the Browns actually struggle with that a lot. Now, they are a team that runs well on first and second down. Kareem Hunt leads the NFL in runs of 10-plus yards or more. And then Nick Chubb actually leads the NFL since week 4 of runs of 20-plus yards or more. So they've shown the ability of getting big runs early in drives and on first down. But they need to show some improvement in terms of what they can do in power formations, especially at the goal line. So I expect Nick Chubb to at least get a rushing touchdown this game. Somewhere between 60 to 70 yards is a good game, to come back. There should be a situation where Browns fans are disappointed, like, he's not running for 100 yards. Why are we not playing Kareem Hunt more? But it really just comes down to the health of Nick Chubb and making sure that that's there first, so we can get him back into football shape, because there still is a long season. And at the end of the day, getting to the playoffs is more important than him having some huge comeback game in his first game back after coming back from IR. Now, continuing the running back position, you look at Kareem Hunt, and, how does Kevin Stefanski keep Kareem Hunt into a significant role in this offense? You look at 22 personnel when there's 2 running backs on the field. Obviously, there's going to be situations where Andy Janovich comes in power formations, whether it be a strong eye or power eye. But you want to see Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt on the field at the same time. In situations, even dating back to last year, when they have Baker Mayfield in shotgun with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb at his hip, they're able to get some mismatches against defenses that are very ideal for this offense. Kareem Hunt does an excellent job of catching passes out of the backfield. You look at the fact that the target share is going to change a lot with the absence of Odell Beckham for the rest of the season. In their last matchup against the Raiders, Jarvis Landry had 11 targets. That's a lot of targets for one person, that only ended up with 5 receptions. So can they, find, a specific role for Kareem Hunt that he'll play on a week in, week out basis of getting him touches. Kareem Hunt is a very talented player, and he did a very exceptional job in terms of being that number one running back, being able to rip off 10-yard runs, being able to catch the ball out of the backfield, even motioning out wide. You want to have Kareem Hunt on the field as much as possible, just as much as Nick Chubb, because we're trying to get Nick Chubb back into football shape. But on the same token, Kareem Hunt has been that player that you've relied on the last basically 5 games. So in that situation, you want Kareem Hunt to continue to grow in his role and not just relegate him to the bench because Nick Chubb is back. So finding that balance is important. I believe, his best role is being that receiving target out of the backfield, being able to motion out wide in empty sets where they found some success, in the red zone is something that he's excelled in a lot, either being matched up one-on-one against a linebacker or a cornerback. And then, of course, allowing him to run the ball in the fourth quarter to help close out games. If they're able to do that and involve both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in the offensive game plan this week, it'll definitely be beneficial for them in terms of getting the offense back on track. Now, the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show is brought to you by Sports Illustrated Browns Digest. Be sure to check us out at www.si.com/NFL/Browns. There will be a Cleveland Browns Houston Texans live game thread throughout the game this week. Myself, I'll be updating it alongside. We'll have some commentary with lead editor Pete Smith and Brandon Little. You can go ahead and actually, if you sign up with an account on the website, you can join us to have a conversation with us as the game is going on. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section of that article. And then also at halftime, you'll have access to the tailgate recipe of the week, which is fried chicken sandwiches. Because again, what would a tailgate be without food? So this week's tailgate recipe of the week is fried chicken sandwiches. I hope you guys enjoy, and then we'll be right back with you shortly. What's going on, everybody? We're back. That is the Cleveland Browns tailgate recipe of the week. Be sure to check us out at sportsillustrated.com/Browns. You'll be able to again see the tailgate recipe of the week during halftime. Now, getting back into this, we're going to be looking at the wide receivers. So obviously, we all know Odell Beckham Jr. is done for the rest of the season with a torn ACL. And one of the questions that has kind of been picking at my brain a little bit is, when will Jarvis Landry score his first touchdown of the season? He's obviously had a little bit of trouble getting to the end zone so far this season. And if he's able to score a touchdown 2 weeks ago against the Las Vegas Raiders, against that one that he decided to call back because he didn't have full possession, those are the type of plays that can change games. Now, I fully expect him to continue to get the bulk of, target share outside of that receiver position, but just him getting to that end zone is that one thing that we've kind of lacked. Obviously he provides, very invaluable leadership during the game. You look at where they played against the Cincinnati Bengals and getting Harrison Bryant on the line, when they were in that situation where they're going to spike the ball to avoid getting a penalty. Things like that are very important in terms of making sure people are lined up, understanding, what's their role, keeping Baker Mayfield, mind in the game, talking to the offense and making sure that everyone's, in the game and, basically doing their job and making sure that they're making the right read. He's been able to make plays in the intermediate parts of the field. He's been able to make plays underneath. He's been able to make plays throwing the ball. So, obviously he's the player that the offense is going to rely on a lot in terms of that receiving production. But really, we just need him to get into the end zone. I believe that he'll likely score his first touchdown of the season this game, just because it seems too hard of an ask or task, I should say, for him not to score with Odell Beckham out of the lineup. Baker Mayfield obviously shown last week that he's going to be, a big target for him, going into the final 8 games of the season. And I really don't see the Texans taking, the effort to really double team Jarvis Landry, just because it's not like he's the offense's only option. Rashar Higgins has shown an ability to have chemistry with Baker Mayfield. You look at the fact that they have tight ends that they can rely on in terms of Austin Hooper, David Njoku, Harrison Bryant. Those are players that Baker Mayfield can spread the ball around to. And if Baker Mayfield is able to spread the ball around with success, that definitely, helps increase the chances of Jarvis Landry eventually getting to the end zone on a one-on-one matchup. But obviously being able to control the ball through, the entire catch is going to be one thing that he will have to do in order to make that happen. Now, another question that has to be answered this week is, how can Rashard Higgins become a dependent receiver number 2? Now, I definitely believe that Higgins is likely going to be the person that gets the bulk of snaps as that other receiver on the field. Daryl Hodge will obviously still get his role as a receiver 3 because of his ability to be a very dependent run blocker. But with Rashard Higgins we need him just to be open on a more consistent basis. Now, with you being receiver 2 on the field, you're going to be going against better corners, not necessarily the third corner on the roster anymore. So he's going to have to get more separation on a more consistent basis. And that's been something that he hasn't shown, too much of throughout his career, is getting consistent separation, just because he's not the fastest receiver in the world. So, that comes down to his route running nuance, just subtle things of being able to make a defender turn his hips early or being able to break out on a certain route. Now, I can definitely say this: against zone defense, he has shown an exceptional job of finding the open space against the zone. So, if he's able to continue to do that, that will definitely help with him being in that role as a receiver number 2. But again, he just has to be able to find more separation and show more of ability to beat man coverage. That was something back in college that they talked about with him coming into the draft, was his ability to separate from defenders consistently. And if he can do that, that will definitely help up this offense a ton. But until that comes, it's still a situation where his target share is pretty much limited to his ability to get consistently open against man coverage. He's trusted in zone. He's always shown, the ability to make a good play against zone and even contested catches, but we just need to see a little bit more from him in terms of man coverage and beating man coverage on a more consistent basis for him to become that receiver 2 that this offense is going to need with Odell Beckham Jr. out. Now, looking at the tight end position, Austin Hooper, he's going to be coming back this week. He missed the last 2 games because of a exploded appendix, so he had to get an appendectomy Friday before there was the Cincinnati Bengals matchup. So obviously, his health it's good that he's returning this week. And one of the things that I kind of look at is, does 13 personnel become a little bit more viable offensive set for the Browns now that Odell Beckham Jr. is gone? You look at the fact that Harrison Bryant against the Cincinnati Bengals had 2 touchdowns. David Njoku had a touchdown as well. Obviously, last week they had an extremely tough game by the fact that Harrison Bryant fumbled the ball and pretty much killed a drive that the Browns had going. And then, of course, David Njoku had the big drop on 3rd down, which also killed the momentum that the Browns were starting to build. So, the tight end group is a position that we want to see a better performance because of their last game where they struggled. But with the 13 personnel, I feel that it offers a lot of versatility and value to the offense. One, by the fact that with 3 tight ends on the field, that gives you a power formation in terms of running the ball. You can find some more success when you have more tight ends going against linebackers or safeties, or even a smaller defensive back that's lined up closer to the line of scrimmage. If they can use, basically these tight ends that have found success, run blocking. Austin Hooper has done a good job run blocking on the edge. Harrison Bryant has been getting better each week in his run blocking. He's becoming a more consistent receiving target. If they're able to do that, that increases, the productivity that the run game can have. And, obviously that's a group that you want to use as much as possible going against this Texans run defense, which is the worst ranked in the NFL. So, if they're able to do that, that just helps this offense, move even more on a consistent basis. But on the same token, with the ability of running the ball because of the run blocking, that opens up the play action. Now, typically, you'll see 13 personnel in red zone situations, but there's nothing stopping you from running 13 personnel to move down the field in a drive if you're finding success with it. Just a simple miscommunication by the defense can cause a player to run free, Austin Hooper, Harrison Bryant, because since you have 3 tight ends on the field, they don't necessarily know which player is going to stay in to block or not, because you can always mix it up. You can have 2 players come off the line with a free release and go straight into the routes, or another player to chip block, stay in and block for a little bit, then have a release and, into the short part of the field or into the flat. Simple plays like that, where you're able to cause some misdirection, can really, provide more opportunities for the offense in terms of getting it to their weapons. I look at David Njoku and his ability, being that move tight end and being able to make contested catches. I definitely believe he could be a mismatch, for the offense against the defense. You line him up in the slot against a smaller defensive back or against a slower linebacker, he can definitely take advantage of that. One, with his tremendous leaping ability, he has the speed, being a move tight end, and he's a player that if you're going to move on from him next season, you need to build some value for it. There's no reason why a player that you've already exercised the 5th-year option on, you just trade for a 5th-round pick because he wants to be traded. You already spent significant draft capital on him, and you're a team that likes to use multiple tight end sets. We've already seen, with Austin Hooper, obviously he was out of the game because of just an internal bodily thing with the appendectomy, but there's nothing from saying that an injury could cause Harrison Bryant or Hooper to be out, and now you're relying on David Njoku for an extended period of time. And, why give up that asset in a team that likes to use 12 personnel a lot because of the offensive scheme that they like to run? So it's important for them to find some success with David Njoku as a receiving option. If they're able to do that, that will definitely help this offense, grow and to be a little bit more consistent in terms of getting it to their tight ends. Now, obviously, Baker Mayfield has to throw the ball to them, but on the same token, they have to get open. I do believe that Austin Hooper was doing a good job of developing a chemistry with Baker Mayfield before he was out for the last 2 games. And they gave him a 4-year contract, so they want more from him. His production standards in terms of what he's been able to do at that tight end position hasn't been enough to warrant the contract that he was given. But even coming to the team, Austin Hooper wasn't, this world-beating tight end. He was a player that really knew how to make plays underneath, find the open man, find the open parts of the zone. And, that's really how he's made his mark so far this season. And quarterbacks, when they're able to build a connection with a player because they know they're going to be in the right spot, depending on what, the defense is doing, that increases their ability, for some target share. So potentially we could see some 13 personnel on the field this week. And again, just that power formation going against that porous Texans run defense that can open up more opportunities for this tight end group. Now, again, the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show is brought to you by Focus Clothing CLE. Be sure to check them out. Again, they have some new apparel that is out right now on their website. That's at www.focusclothingcle.com/shop. Again, they are a Black-owned family apparel business based in Cleveland, Ohio. So go ahead, be sure to check them out at that Focus Clothing CLE, and they are the sponsor of this week's episode of the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show. So we're going to go ahead and continue to get back into the show. Looking at the matchups to watch for this game, the biggest one is definitely going to be the Texans receivers versus the Browns cornerbacks and really the entire Browns secondary. You look at the fact that Denzel Ward has been the best cornerback for this team so far this season. He's a player that's basically going to be looking for a contract extension next offseason, and he's more deserving of it than pretty much any player in the secondary. He's been playing extremely well, been that essentially lockdown corner that we've needed, playing well against very talented opponents at the wide receiver position. And he's going to have another big game this week where he has to go against both Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks, very fast receivers, but he does run that sub 4.3 40. So he obviously has a lot of speed and can cover receivers down the field. But this is going to be another matchup in which Terrence Mitchell needs to have a big game. Terrence Mitchell having to go against those faster receivers, he's definitely going to have to use that physicality and just being very physical at the line of scrimmage, going against the receivers and not allowing them a free release. Because I feel like it's a lot harder to cover a very fast receiver with a free release if you're not jamming them up at the line of scrimmage. So, expect Joe Woods to try to pressure these receivers at the line of scrimmage, just to be able to get them out of the route just a little bit, just throw off the timing and, try to use some blitzes to get after Deshaun Watson so he doesn't just tear apart this secondary. And then also, you look at the nickelback position with Kevin Johnson. Kevin Johnson, was playing well heading into this season. Obviously, he was out for a few weeks and was, replaced Tavier Thomas after he came back from that lacerated liver. But he's kind of been having, mixed performances over the last few weeks. Penalties have kind of cost him a little bit, allowing some receivers to run free over the middle. Just want to find him to get back, to that confidence that he had where he's playing extremely well. And, he's going to have a very tough matchup against Randall Cobb, who's a very savvy veteran out of the slot that has always relatively played well and has a very good quarterback throwing him the ball. So, the success that the Browns quarterbacks can have against the receivers of the Texans this week could really be the difference maker in terms of what this defense is able to do against Deshaun Watson. Because if they're able to limit them a little bit in terms of man coverage, or when they're in zone, knock the receivers off their route and then keep things in front of them, that will force the Texans to have longer sustained drives, which is very difficult to do. And if they're able to do that, then they might have, the Texans may have to run the ball a little bit more, something that they haven't done with success. But, it all starts with the Browns cornerbacks. If they're able to be physical, at the point of catch, be able to knock the ball down, and wrap up and tackle, one of the things that they haven't done on a consistent basis against receivers. Not run up, bumping somebody with a shoulder, wrapping up and tackling and getting 11 hats to the football is going to be really important. But again, just the timing to have to disrupt and play very solid coverage to limit the windows that Deshaun Watson will be able to throw against this Browns secondary. Now, looking at the defensive line, this is going to be important for Olivier Vernon to build upon the performance that he had against the Raiders. Now, do I expect him to have 2 sacks this game as well? I don't, but he's going to have a very tough matchup against Laremy Tunsil, who's the best offensive lineman that the Texans have. Can he grow in the production that he had against the Raiders 2 weeks ago and just be able to get to the quarterback? Now, he's shown ability to have some success holding the edge in the run game. Now, that's something that he's done relatively well since he's joined the team. But really the main reason why he was signed to the Browns, was traded for, was the fact that in pretty much every season since 2014, he had at least 6.5 sacks. He's got nowhere close to that since he's joined the Browns. That's been a matter of health and, a little bit of potentially age, being on the back end of his prime. But if Olivier Vernon is able to, provide some more consistency, that takes a little bit of pressure off of Myles Garrett. Obviously in situations that they're rotating in players, Porter Gustin and Adrian Claiborne also need to get after the quarterback and provide some pressure, because pressure is going to be huge for this matchup. If you don't get pressure on Deshaun Watson, against a team that has given up a sack in 17 straight games, you don't win this game. Point blank, period. I don't care how many points the offense scores. If they don't get pressure on Deshaun Watson, this is going to be a game that the Browns lose. Because if you can't get after the quarterback against a team that has allowed defenses to get after their quarterback, then you're setting yourself up to fail. Like I said previously, the cornerbacks are very important. But all the cornerbacks are really going to do is either give Deshaun Watson harder windows to throw in or just give the defensive line an extra second to get after the quarterback. But if you don't get there and make the play, it was all for naught. And Deshaun Watson has shown this wizardry ability to get out of the quarterback, to get out of sacks and make plays down the field. And they can't allow that this week. You know, they need to get after the quarterback. Porter Gustin, Adrian Claiborne, even Larry Ogunjobi, another player that's in a contract year after this season. He may not return. Can he get after the quarterback and cause some pressure on the interior, which has given, Deshaun Watson a little bit of trouble. But the Browns have to get after Deshaun Watson and create pressure early and often this week. It's essential for the Browns to win this game to do that. And then lastly, looking at the secondary, can Ronnie Harrison shore up the secondary is very important. When you look at Andrew Sendejo and the liability that he's been in the secondary, Ronnie Harrison has been that player to really bring this defensive group full circle. Obviously, Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward are the two best players on this defense. B.J. Goodson, thank the Lord, has been playing a lot better since his first 4 weeks with the team. He's been playing a lot more consistent. He's been better in coverage. He's been solid in tackling, and he's really the captain and vocal leader of that defense. Ronnie Harrison's ability to create turnovers and make plays in the secondary has been huge for this defense and on that third level. If he's able to do that this week and pretty much for the remaining 8 games of the season, that's going to be a huge win for general manager Andrew Berry. And the fact that they traded him for a 5th-round pick. Finding the 7th best rated safety for a 5th-round pick, when you look at Jamal Adams and the struggles that he's had so far this season in terms of coverage, it's huge for Ronnie Harrison. And he's only going to get better, again, with more time in the secondary, just more game snaps and experience. But in situations that they decided to mix it up and take out Sendejo and potentially put in Carl Joseph or Sheldrick Redwine, you want Ronnie Harrison on the field as much as possible because he's been your best safety. I still don't understand why they're not giving an extended look at Sheldrick Redwine. Maybe this might be the week because he has played well in terms of pass coverage, but he's only played 91 defensive snaps this season. So do they give Redwine an extended look this season? Or this game? I'm not sure, but you really look to Harrison to be that person to kind of provide some consistency that Andrew Sendejo hasn't been able to give in that third level of the defense. So just looking at what the Browns can do, it's going to be very, very important for them to find success. So the 3 keys to winning this game for the Browns are 3 big ones. 1, run the ball early and often. You get Nick Chubb back. You have Kareem Hunt, who leads the league in 10+ yards or more on carries this season. Run the ball. You have Wyatt Teller coming back, which is huge. When he's on the field, the offensive line plays its best in terms of run potential and run productivity. Now that you have your number 1 running back, you have your tight end back, you have your right guard back, everything you need, and not to mention a 32nd ranked run defense. Everything you need to get this offensive going is by running the ball. Run the ball early and often to set up the play action, and that'll help the passing game, but you need to run the ball. Number 2, prevent big plays in the secondary. There's going to be at least 2. I don't know who's going to be against, but there's going to be at least 2 this game. And one of them might be for a touchdown. If there's 3 big plays in the secondary, one of them is definitely going to be for a touchdown. But there's going to be at least 2. If you can prevent big plays in the secondary, that limits what the offense can do in terms of their ability to score points for the Texans. The Browns secondary obviously struggled. Obviously the third level. If they're able to just keep things in front of them, what Joe Woods wants to do, that gives the Browns a better chance of winning this game against a team that has shown an extreme ability of throwing the ball. And then lastly, this has been the thing that has really helped the Browns most this season, something that they've done as a top 5 unit in the NFL. Forced turnovers on defense, forced fumbles, an interception, a turnover on downs. The Browns have to force a turnover to win this game. If this is a shootout where the Browns don't have a turnover, it's going to be very tough for us to win. And that's not because the Texans are just significantly better than us. Their offense has shown ability to put up points when they can throw the ball with success, which they've done at one of the highest rates in the NFL. If the Browns can force a turnover and limit the big plays in the secondary, this is a game that the Browns absolutely should win. And it's important for them to win this game if they want to get back into the playoff hunt. Currently, right now, the Raiders and the Dolphins are in the 2 wild card spots that the Browns are missing out on. Depending on how the rest of the season plays out, it's likely that the Steelers are going to win the AFC North, and I don't see anyone taking the Baltimore Ravens spot of the 3 wild card spots. If the Browns want to make the playoffs, it starts today by beating the Texans and running the ball and getting Nick Chubb back into football shape. Finding out what this defensive unit is now with the addition of Ronnie Harrison and figuring out how to limit Andrew Sendejo from making game-changing mistakes, which personally, or some of it does fall into play calling by the defensive staff. You know, Joe Woods has to make some adjustments because you've already seen what Andrew Sendejo is for 8 games, so there's no excuse of not knowing where he needs to be. It starts now because the next 2 games against the Philadelphia Eagles and the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have to win in order for them to find some success before they play against the Tennessee Titans, which is going to be an extremely tough matchup. So if the Browns want to make a run for the playoffs, it starts this week in Week 10 against the Houston Texans. I want to thank you guys so much, everyone that came and joined me for the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show. Again, my name is Sean Stevenson. Feel free to follow me on social media at SHWN Stevenson. That's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Also, be sure to join me for the live game thread over on Sports Illustrated. That's at www.si.com/NFL/Browns. I'll see you guys at the game thread. Hope you enjoy the game. Try to stay warm out there. And then lastly, for the tailgate recipe of the week, be sure to check that out on the Sports Illustrated website at halftime. And I'll see you guys.